so tough. You're so tough for yourself. You're so, you like it so.
Hello and welcome to Every Takes, where I talk about specific topic with a friend. My friend today have been dying to talk about this one. But my friend is SeaAphrodite, wife, mom, a financial expert, and someone that has been opening my eyes to a lot of things. Today's topic. Oh well, thanks for coming to the podcast today.
Thank you.
And today's topic is bondage and impact, which I find really intriguing and interesting. So yeah, do they always come together or
No, not
okay?
always. And it's interesting. I mean, I think we're only going to address them at a very surface level, unfortunately, because there's just so much to
Yeah.
both. But I think pain is definitely one thing. Impact is very pain oriented, and there's a catharsis around it. And then bondage, I think, is much more about kind of giving up control, clearly. And so, actually, bondage you could put with other kinds of sensory deprivation, like blindfolding, right? Anything that kind of releases control, goes into that sort of category. So, we didn't sort of say it specifically, but we can kind of stick it in there,
Mm-hmm.
right? And there's different types of bondage. Obviously, there's sort of rope bondage, there's cuffing, cuffs. But I think anytime that you are at somebody's mercy, and I think some people like a little bit of bondage, and some people really want it to be kind of restrictive because they really want to feel like they can't. Do you know what I mean? Like if you kind of are wearing a set of handcuffs, but you know you can take them off, or if you're sort of bound, but it's easy to get out
Yep.
of. If you just pull a little bit, that's not as for some people, it's not as real as if they're really bound in a serious
Mm.
way, which I've learned to do, through different, again, kind of rope and different sort of devices, where they really, especially for me, I bind, obviously, a lot of men who are very strong, and that kind of feeling of not being able to use their strength and being vulnerable, that's a big word for bondage, being vulnerable, is incredibly important for that facet of their sexuality that they're trying to experience, whatever it is that comes with that. Because usually bondage isn't by itself, right? I mean, it can be, but a lot of times it's bondage plus penetration, it's bondage plus like whatever it is,
Mm-hmm.
right? So that I think bondage element, as I said, is about kind of releasing control, being powerless, trusting someone else. It's a bit scary, it's obviously very exciting. So that's one piece of it. The impact, which again we can sort of delve into, I know you have questions, but the impact piece, pain, right? Every kind of pain. And again, we can put lots of different things into it. There's things that I personally don't do a lot of, but there's kind of needles and cutting and, different kinds of eliciting different kinds of pain.
Mm-hmm.
That has, again, it's, part of it is, again, this catharsis of pain. Some people experience pain in different ways from others, and they can come with that kind of pleasure. It hurts, but there's a high, right, that comes with it. And some people just hate pain, so they have to obviously like learn about themselves in this
Mm.
regard. Impact, the way that we do it, Mr. C and I, especially with women, often comes with the kind of bruising or the color that comes with impact. So you get like a souvenir for later,
Right.
where you go home and you get to look at it and you sort of see the kind of it's damage that was done, but you see the kind of what you were able to
Mm-hmm.
take. So it's almost, I think, an achievement orientation, like how much can I take? How much can I push my body? And this actually, I think we had talked about pegging in a prior, pod. That for some men especially, you see that desire to show how much they can take for kind of anal
Right.
stretching, for
Yep.
example, and it's a matter of pride. I think for a lot of very masculine men, it's almost like a way of showing strength. And I think for women, because women are known to be more kind of better at pain. Women, give birth and all those things, and so our culture sort of says women are good at pain. They're showing off in a way.
Mm.
They're showing off to themselves and their partners how much they can take, right? How much they can tolerate, and then that bruising is kind of a reminder. And people find those bruises to be really beautiful because they're, again, reminders of what you were able to
Mm-hmm.
do. And again, the feeling of pain, that sort of moment of sort of release and catharsis and like kind of an emotional and physical high, that comes along with it, is, for some people really exciting. I mean, these are very specific kinks, I would say, where I know we've talked about some kinks where they're kind of they're more common for people, right? Like, oral worship we talked about, like most women enjoy, being licked, right? Most men who have a prostate can enjoy that prostate under the right circumstances. I would say that bondage and impact are more acquired tastes, or they're more
Right.
specific to an individual, because some people do just hate pain. And some people feel very uncomfortable being constrained or blindfolded. They just cannot tolerate it, and especially if they don't have the trust that comes with it. So, but I think that for the people that this works for psychologically, and physically, these are really amazing kinks. And again, I practice these as a dominant with women and with men. I do find the kind of, the variations. Like I said, women tend to like more pain, although you have some men who are very inclined for it. But on average, I think the average woman can take more pain. And then again, kind of bondage really depends on the individual, the extent to which they want to feel like they have no escape, the extent to which they can trust, being under somebody else's control, which, by the way, is a really important thing for a dominant to create that kind of
Mm,
trust, right? So kind of reflective a little bit on
mhm,
you as a dominant if somebody sort of trusts you that way. But yeah, I mean, these are really fun, really awesome kinks. I think they're very focused on the submissive. There's obviously some kinks that are, for the dom, right? I mean, certainly when somebody's worshiping me, right, it's something that I enjoy a
mhm,
lot. When I'm performing impact or when I'm binding someone, I can certainly enjoy that from an achievement standpoint. Like, look how good I am at
mhm.
this, right? But at the end of the day, it really is for that person. It's for them physically and psychologically, which is something that I really love too. I mean, that's a lot of why I dom people, is the kind of desire to make someone else
Mm.
feel things, right? It's not always kind of just a selfish act, and dominance should never be a selfish act.
Right. No, and I think especially with the way you approach it, you give a lot more. So I don't think there's any selfishness there. Um, you mentioned something. Yeah, being vulnerable. Like that's physical, but it's also mental. Like, do you ever have scenes where it is even like it becomes even more than what's physically happening? If that makes any sense.
Yeah, no, I think so. I think you can get to a different plane, like a different sort of
Yep.
place. With bondage, again, the kind of lack of control, your control over someone, and certainly with impact. I mean, I think people can go down a rabbit hole as part of like why I'm there. On their behalf, because they always come into it having safe words or safe gestures, or kind of no, I'm always checking in with people. Are you okay? Are you okay? Like, there's always the kind of ongoing communication. But I certainly have had impact bottoms, and again, Mr. C and I often co-top for impact. He's is obviously bigger than me, he's stronger, and he's actually very good with some of the specific implements. Maybe kind of has more power with them than I do. Um, I think sometimes my function is actually to pull the person back, or to kind of stop something where I know it's too much, but the
Mm,
person is not stopping it
mm,
themselves. And you kind of have to know, like, if somebody has gotten inside their own head to such a degree that they're kind of allowing damage, beyond what they would normally allow, because they're just so into it and they're kind of riding that
mhm.
high. And again, that's about kind of responsible domination. Like, you have to, you ride the
Yep.
high, but you also have to kind of, be there as the backstop to be responsible for the person in the long run.
Definitely, definitely. I'm thinking though. Another thing is like, what are some things you have to put in place for safety when it comes to bondage and impact?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, it really depends on whether the person is, able to speak, for example, right? So are they, gagged? If they're gagged, there has to be some other way to kind of communicate, with them effectively, so they can communicate to you. If someone, if you are speaking to someone and they can speak back, it's, I think a lot of it is about that communication. Do they have the presence of mind to say that it's too much, or do they have like the presence of mind to remember what their safe word was, or kind of, or do you just have to read their body, like you just have to kind of read them to make sure they're
Mm,
okay? I think people fall into subspace. Like, you see it very often, I think, with bondage and impact, more than you do with many other things, where they just kind of fall into this place where they're tolerating, or not just tolerating, but they're kind of their body is there, and the mind kind of goes blank a bit.
mhm,
And things can happen beyond what they would normally, as I said, be able to sort of be comfortable with from a physical perspective. And you have to really watch out for that. So I think I do. I mean, I communicate in real time all the time. And sometimes I just make the call, that this is enough. We need to take a break,
Right.
right? I try to be respectful of the person's choices, but if I see that somebody is deep in subspace, and just kind of not able to advocate for themselves anymore, or they're kind of pushing themselves, again, from this kind of desire to please or this desire to prove something, but they've gotten past the kind of comfort point. Then, like I said, sometimes it's the job of the sort of the dominant partner who's got the kind of, your head's clear,
Hmm.
to be the one who. Okay, let's take a break.
Awesome. Wow. Do you have favorite tools when it comes to impact?
Such an interesting question. So I really like bare hand. I mean,
Oh.
I'm very tactile. Like I think Mr. C loves, I mean, he collects like some really interesting implements. And I've actually learned to love a lot of his stuff too. But I bias towards open hand. I like to feel it myself. I mean, there's a limit to how much I can do,
Mm.
obviously, but I like the sting as well. I like when we're both feeling it, and not just one person. But I will say that I do like flogging. I have a couple of really great floggers that I like. Mr. C is bigger on paddles than I am, which are like rigid, kind of more rigid wooden paddles, for example. I'm not as big a fan of. I like things that have a little bit of give. So I like floggers. I like kind of leather straps, like almost even like a belt, but I have better than belt, kind of leather strap type toys. And then increasingly, I've been really enjoying like a bamboo, a very sort of narrow, kind of switch, type of thing, where I can paint. I call them stripes, okapi or zebra
Mm-hmm.
stripes.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a really flexible, very light. For me, I'm obviously like Mr. C can handle something very heavy, metal. And I'm not as strong as he is. So I like something that's light, but has, some, can make some real impact. So I think I kind of bias towards maybe smaller, lighter, more kind of bendable, toys that you can do many things with.
Mm-hmm.
Versus he, often likes again like a really heavy hand, and sort of like a rigid structure. Yeah, but I think I basically move to something else when I've exhausted my ability to hit by hand
Mm.
and it hurts too much for me, but the person still needs
Right.
more. Then I'll switch to something as a tool. But I tend to want to be in physical contact with my sub. I tend to like not want as many things between
Mm-hmm.
us. And so, for that reason, I tend to start by hand.
You're so thoughtful, you're so thoughtful. You're so thoughtful, you're so. You're so. You like it too.